Uh-oh. Live
Hello.
stream. Okay.
Here we are. Hello, everybody. My name is Timothy Gager, and welcome to a new season of virtual Thursday's Dire Literary Series. And tonight, our feature is the wonderful Marianne Leone, and we're going to we'll show you her bio if we can do it. Yeah, I queued it up. There we go. And there she is with her son. And I'm gonna use my quick intelligence to transfer this into third person. Marianne grew up in 7 miles outside of Boston in Newton, in Lake area, which is the Italian section of Newton.
Yeah.
Her mother and father, both Italian immigrants. Her mother was an outsider from Sulmona Abruzzo, and her dad was a small working man's bar, Leone's Cafe. So Marianne has written 2 books that I know of, and just got signed for a third one. It's Jessie, A Mother's Story, and Ma Speaks Up. And she just signed a contract for her new book, and we're gonna have her tell you guys about it, and turn it on over to Marianne.
Thank you, Tim. The new book is called Five Dog Epiphany. I guess the 12 years of Catholic school, I can't get rid of these kind of, but it's about rescue dogs, grief, and mutual healing. And we've had 4 rescue dogs. One was not a rescue, but this chronicles them, and this chronicles what dogs like this do to help you with grief. And I want to read a piece from 2 short. One is a short piece that actually was in the Globe. This piece. This is about the last 2 rescues we got during COVID. Our 17-year-old rescues both died, Lucky and Frenchie. And I'll read this. This is about Titi and Sugar, the new rescues. It's called. They named it A Gentle Touch. I would not have called it that, but whatever. I'm still mourning Frenchie, my husband said. Frenchie and Lucky, our 17-year-old rescues, died during the pandemic. Lucky early in the year, then Frenchie in September, a pair of wounded healers who never knew they were healers. In October, COVID was rising. The 15th anniversary of our son's death was in January, and a bleak winter lay ahead. A dogless household seemed too depressing to bear. I began sneaking looks at Pet Finder. Titi, an undersized Bichon Frise, seduced me with her hopeful smile. Her origin story was grim. Kept in a backyard cage for the entirety of her 6 years, Titi birthed multiple litters, so neglected that her rescuers discovered the harness growing into her flesh. As a brutal result, Titi had become a fear biter. I could identify with a fear biter. I'd had to fight fiercely for our son Jesse to be recognized as a fully cognizant human being. He was born prematurely and, as a result of a cerebral hemorrhage, was quadriplegic and nonverbal. I would bite anyone who denied my son his humanity, this boy who, despite his physical limitations, was on the honor roll every year and wrote poetry on his adapted computer. At age 6, Jesse had sat on Santa's lap and summoned every bit of muscle control to blurt "dog" into Santa's ear. Goody appeared on Christmas morning and was his beloved fur sibling for the rest of Jesse's life. A dog's presence in our home seemed to honor the memory of our son. Titi's smile telegraphed her resilience. I hoped it would be contagious. I presented her case to my husband until finally he agreed. Titi drew his blood on the very first day. We were with her in our fenced-in backyard on a sunny, crisp November afternoon. Titi's unbounded joy at running free was soul-stirring, and we basked in it. After many giddy circles, she flopped down near the raspberry bushes, and we were all ready to go inside. It was time for the maneuver we dreaded, picking Titi up. We approached her warily. Chris stepped on the leash, but Titi wriggled out of her harness. making capture almost impossible. We made blockades with lawn furniture, tried to pinch her move, and surrounded her. No luck. Titi's rescuers had told us to try throwing a towel over her first, but it made us feel like kidnappers or worse, complicit abusers as we watched her thrash helplessly. When Chris stood over her, threw the towel, and picked her up, she bit, and he bled. It wasn't deep. Chris blamed himself. I'm a guy, he said. I'm wearing a hat. I loomed. But the bloody bite was the start of a love story. During the first week in January, the week that pulls us into the anniversary of our most staggering loss, Titi crept up from the end of the bed and licked Chris's hand in the dark. Within a week, she launched into a full body shimmy if he even glanced her way. The fear biting was at an end and the love fest had begun. I admit to having felt the tiniest bit jealous watching them morph into Lady and the Tramp, sharing a single spaghetti strand, beaming love at each other while I was relegated to the stereotypical Italian waiter dishing up dinner. But whatever envy I is soon overcome, as I too am enveloped by the love blast emanating from these two. I know the energy that draws Titi to Chris. It's the same gentleness and infinite patience that surrounded our son when he was with us. Chris lifting him from his wheelchair or playing video games, waiting for Jesse's wavering hand to hit his switch, or placing a little turtle into Jesse's hand. We lie in bed, watching Titi wiggle in ecstasy on her back. She burrows into the memory quilt of Jesse's t-shirts on our bed, and it's as if he too is embracing her and welcoming her home. That's one of them. Thank you. And this is, should I go right into the next one, Tim? Cool. Okay. This is called Lucky in Love, Love 101. I think you're starting to love me, I taunt Lucky after he lets me fondle him for the second day in a row without flinching. He so doesn't want to love me. It interferes with his tough guy self-image. Summer is over, and it's the grim season of canvas skies and early dark. I attempt to invade Lucky and Frenchie's favorite new space on the big green chair. My husband is working in another state, and I have been living in my head all day, communing with ghosts. I need contact with a beating heart. Frenchie is a pushover. Frenchie Garibaldi lets me stare directly into his eyes, big and brown and dolorous like his dog father, Giuseppe Garibaldi, the storied unifier of Italy. Frenchie lets me see his suffering. He has a noble yet vacant face, the scars of abuse making him see the world through an invisible barrier. Frenchie Garibaldi has officially succumbed to my siren charms. Frenchie and Lucky climb onto the biggest and most comfortable chair in our living room. They sleep there every night. They allow me to sidle onto the chair and pet them. I make this as much as a routine as the morning run outside to sprinkle the shrubbery, followed by breakfast bones. But recently, Frenchie has decided that this petting thing is a drug to which he will become addicted. The first night, I climb onto the chair and he is on the dog bed. He immediately sits up and raises his paws onto the hassock, but he doesn't dare jump up. I encourage him, but he stays immobile, unable to make the leap. I help him up and pet him. He is so overcome with pleasure, he begins panting heavily. The next night, he jumps up without any prompting. This is exactly like seducing a boyfriend named Frenchie Garibaldi from my old working class neighborhood outside of Boston. That doesn't seem like a stretch. Lucky, the full Bichon, is bolder than Frenchie, and his bluster at the approach of strangers is over the top theatrical, especially in light of the fact that he weighs 13 pounds soaking wet. I too am included in the stranger category if I do something suspicious like go downstairs, then come back up, my face and scent transformed into stranger danger by disappearing for 2 minutes. First, Lucky barks madly, then he howls, finally subsiding into huffy snorts and low growls, his huge black eyes never leaving the intruder, myself, or an actual stranger. But for all his haka dancing, The mini Maori warrior is terrified of touch. Even adjacent touching is threatening. He jumps off the big green chair every time I snuggle with Frenchie. It makes sense. Lucky is smarter than Frenchie, and he has a better memory of what touch means. It means bad things. It means being kicked and hit and picked up by the scruff of the neck and flung to the ground. My memory of touch is silky golden skin covering a slender, spastic body that responds to a massage with a grateful clicking sound for yes. My memory of touch is also colored by sudden loss and the ephemeral solace of dreams. The rescue dogs and I have formed a pack, all of us wary of the way life can, without any warning, grab you by the scruff of the neck or kick you aside. But at least I remember love. It's time to move this along. I sidle gently toward the chair and Lucky stands nervously, ready to bolt. I put my hand out and he flinches, but he doesn't leap away. He settles down and lets me stroke him, a first. I try to calm the excitement I feel at this major step. Lucky averts his face as I rub his head. He allows only a few strokes before he jumps off the chair. A few days later, I creep into the chair again. This time they both stay put. I roll their necks and try to rub out the memory of fear. I pull the fleece blanket over all of us. Lucky puts his head on my chest, over my heart. I am thrilled and afraid to move. He still won't look at me, the fearsome combination of petting and direct love too overwhelming for his crumpled little soul. The next morning, he runs away just because I happen to make eye contact. I can't help it. I'm insulted. Suddenly, this little fluff ball is like every bad boyfriend who never called after a hot date like they said they would. An absurd image of Lucky superimposed over a surly boy in a torn t-shirt and low-slung jeans comes roiling back from my tormented teenage past. He watches me from a safe distance through half-lidded eyes. His lip curls into a sneer. He's bad, he wants me to know. He doesn't need me or anyone. I half expect him to jam a cigarette into his mouth and grab my lighter, staring at me as it dangles from his smirking lips. Sometimes the sheer work of getting these dogs to be dogs just infuriates me. They're Bichons. They're supposed to crave laps, affection, doting. That's why they're tucked snugly under the arms of all these 18th century royals and paintings, coddled to a fare thee well. But when I'm overtaken by impatience, the dog's core level fear looks to me like spite. I forget temporarily that they are ex-puppy mill prisoners. At the moment, I don't care. They are stubborn, ungrateful. I boil marrow bones and bestow them every morning, sometimes even before I pour my own crucial startup coffee. I am their bone goddess. Can't they just love me? Back on the chair the next night for another try, I channel the temptations and serenade Lucky in my cracked from years of smoking falsetto. I'm going to shower you with love and affection. Look out, it's coming in your direction. A flip of the tail and he's gone. Lucky thinks I'm a crazed stalker. Or worse, he's embarrassed by my ironic porch singer pose. He peers at me from his safety zone under the oak table across the room, as far away from me as he can get and still inhabit the same space. The next morning, he comes sniffing around when I'm on the floor doing yoga, but I ignore him. Two can play at this game, buddy. He leaps onto the hassock and his eyes never leave my outstretched legs as I move them left to right, right to left, his head windshield wiping like he's in the stands at Wimbledon. I move into the cobra position. When I lift my head, Lucky backs away as if I were a real viper. You know what? This is good, I tell myself as I scrub out the oil slick pan in which I boiled another batch of marrow bones. Lucky and Frenchie are damaged. These dogs are too damaged to need me, except for food, water, and shelter, and I'm too damaged to nurture them. They're the perfect dogs for right now, for this walled in by grief time of life. They're zombified by pain, so am I. They stare dazedly at things and totter stiffly around, so do I. They're afraid of everything, so am I. We're made for each other. Jesse was damaged too, but that was just on the outside. He was quadriplegic and nonverbal and brilliant. He wrote poetry using his computer and made the honor roll every semester. But he wasn't damaged inside like these dogs. He could take love in and reflect it back like the world's biggest magnifying glass. Love in, love out. That's how it worked with Jesse. It's time to walk them. Frenchie is stunned and compliant and easy to get onto the leash. Lucky slinks round and around the oak table, slithering under chairs, always just out of reach. I almost give up. This feels too much like some kind of sneaky Zen koan or a horrible life metaphor, drearily going around in circles, chasing after something I don't even want. I bark out his name like a drill sergeant, like all the books say I'm supposed to do, and Lucky flattens to the ground. I hate it. I hate the pack leader thing, and I hate seeing Lucky abject and cowering. And what? Thinking I might just morph into one of his former jailers? The sky too looks threatening, adding to the gloom of the already dark day. On our stop and start walk, I look down at these two rescues. Frenchie skitters along with his back hunched, ready to duck and cover at a moment's notice, his ears lifted by the wind, which only adds to his fear factor, amplifying sounds and ramping up the nameless terror of crackling leaves. I stop to pet him reassuringly, but he hunches even further, bending like a comma at the approach of my hand. Finally, he accepts the caress. His liquid eyes telegraph a mute apology for flinching. Lucky surges ahead, a dog on a mission, turning his head back occasionally to bite the leash. Then, an epiphany. He turns to look at me after a particularly satisfying sniff at a clump of weeds, a gap-toothed smile of pure joy stretching from ear to furry ear. I'm so shocked I smile back. A minute later, he's back to biting the leash, and I'm wondering if I imagined the smile. But when I unleash Lucky at our door, the metamorphosis continues. He cavorts wildly at my feet in a paroxysm of delight, his eyes never leaving my face. He swirls like a Sufi mystic in the throes of religious ecstasy. He prances like a man dancing for his beloved. He invites me to play, but by his rules. I take him up on his invitation eagerly, immediately forgetting my former dark and brooding thoughts. I learn the rules by trial and error. They are: clap your hands, freeze in position, now chase me and I'll run away, but I'll always come back. It's a tiny, skewed version of love in, love out. He's still damaged, and so am I. But maybe this outside game can lead us in, and there we will begin.
Wow. Thank you, Marianne. That was beautiful and
Thank
powerful. What great work. It's
you.
great to see you. You opened the virtual diary series very, very beginning of the pandemic. So it's really cool to have you back here.
Thank you.
You read from Five Dog Epiphany, which the ink is still wet on the contract. We work with Axonic Books.
Akashic.
Akashic. Tell me a little bit about working with them. And
well, this is on Anne Hood's imprint. She has an imprint in her daughter's name, Gracie Books. She also lost a child, and so she does books on grief within Akashic. So I've only met Johnny Temple via email, where I'm supposed to go in and sometime this month and meet with them. Anne is my editor, and I'm working on editing it now. So it should be hopefully out next year. We shall see.
You do so much, and you've done so much even during the pandemic. Let's talk a little bit about, you made a film.
We did. We get this call from Celine Rattray, who is a British producer, and she's done like New York, I Love You, Novitiate, a bunch of compilation films actually. And she called and said, "Listen, I'm putting together a compilation film, and I would like you to write a 10-minute scene. And here's how this will work. We will send you 2 big suitcases of equipment. You will have a director of photography offsite and a sound guy offsite. And we will send you all the equipment. You will have 2 days to shoot and 1 day for reshoots." So I tell this to Chris, he's like, "No." I'm like, "Yes, because we're not going to, what are we going to do? There's no work. We should do this." So I write a scene about a couple that has a custody dog, because at that time we had lost Lucky and we still had Frenchie, who was 17 years old. And so they've separated because she has misophonia. And in case you don't know what that is, that's when you can't stand loud chewing or gum chewing, slurping, anything like that, which I kind of have. But anyway, this has caused the breakup. Yeah, I can never go to Asia because of the slurping of noodles. But at any rate, so I wrote this piece, and we had 2 days. The thing I did that was like the worst thing I did is I'm the bane of my neighborhood because I feed the turkeys and the wild turkeys in our neighborhood. I really like them. They're like pterodactyls. They fly down. They're like amazing. And they eat ticks. So it's good to have turkeys. However, the rest of my neighbors who all have prissy lawns are like, they're ruining our lawns. I don't really care, but they hate me. Anyway, the turkeys come every day. So I wrote them in, but it turns out when you aim a camera at something with a brain the size of a pencil eraser, it runs away. So this was a huge nightmare for us. It turned into, but when we got the suitcases with the equipment, it was really terrifying to look at what was in there. And we had this little iPhone to shoot with that had some kind of program on it. And Chris was the director and I was the sound guy. And it was,
Wow.
it was pretty terrifying. We look really bad in this because of course no makeup. And but anyway, it's part of this compilation film called called With/In, and it's on Stars right now.
So it's on Stars, you can see it, and it's a short film, correct?
No, it's part of a regular length film because there's a bunch of other people like Rosie Perez and Julianne Moore and Don Cheadle and Julianne Nicholson and Morgan Spector and Rebecca Hall. They all did little pieces and they were very imaginative what they did. You know, I mean, they were totally, different what everybody did. So
That sounds fascinating. Now, you and Chris met in acting school, but you've never worked together. So what was that like?
Well, actually, we had worked together in a Nancy Savoca film, her student film, her senior film that won the Hague Manoogian Award, the first woman to call Bad Timing, where he played a failed actor and I played his pregnant wife. And that was the last time we had acted together. So it was really fun to act together again. Yeah, totally fun.
Tell me a little bit about the Intelligent Lives project.
Intelligent Lives is a documentary that Chris did the narration for, and he opens and closes the film with footage of our son Jesse, and it's about how testing marginalizes people with disabilities and immigrants. And we were so on board with this. Dan Habib made this film, and he did a fantastic job. He's a really good documentarian, and it was we're all for supporting filmmakers. Like right now, Chris, we are executive producing something by Alexander Freeman, who is a young man, the age Jesse would have been, graduate of Emerson, has already won an award for his first documentary, has a partner and a baby girl. He has spastic quadriplegia, and he's an amazing guy. So we are helping him make this film, so we shall see.
That's incredible. Now, tell me a little bit about like working with the writer's strike. How does that affect you? Does that just give you time to write yourself or write for yourself? Or
yeah, I'm not writing screenplay right now. I'm writing, I'm editing this book, and it is weird. We can do, the stage is still happening, and we actually are going to do a staged reading of A.R. Gurney's Love Letters for a Commonwealth Shakespeare pretty soon, to as a fundraiser for them. So it's something, we're just doing what we can do in the meantime. Actually, we're at the sunset of our career. I said to Chris how terrifying this would be if it were, if Jesse was a newborn and we were scrabbling, for
Yes.
money. I really feel for young people right now. And I think that the corporate greed from these, Bob Iger, the president of Disney, made $500 million over the last 5 years. That's $100 million a year, okay? And they're worried about giving residuals for streaming. It's disgusting, We went to the rally in Boston. I'm frustrated. I'm frustrated that I can't be in New York because I could be picketing, but there's not that much you could picket here because there's nothing happening.
How close are they for reaching a settlement on this? Not at all?
I only know what I'm hearing from our agent who, I was talking to Nancy Savoca the other day because her film that she did, Household Saints, is going to be at the New York Film Festival, right? And I was a nun in that. And I keep getting cast as a nun, by the way, which is pretty weird. Anyway, I find that really strange. But at any rate, yeah, they're doing a Q&A that we can't participate in. And they're showing her first film that she did where I played the title role, called Renata. This was before I was in SAG even. And it takes place in one day. And it's this woman who's leaving her abusive husband. And she has 3 kids. So I'm so sorry that I can't go to this, but we're not supposed to promote anything. And, I worked as a SAG actress in Household Saints, so we can't unless, and my agent, we talked to our agent. I said, do you think, I said, I've heard rumors about October. And he was like, I'm hearing the end of after the new year, which I really love hearing. Yeah. I mean, it's really bad.
Yeah, I like that you play a lot of nuns, because nuns did in fact ruin your music career, correct?
They did ruin my music career, but I even played one in Ireland. Look at this is me. This is me in Ireland
That's amazing.
Again, a nun. It's like, I think, and I played a nun in the Three Stooges that Bobby and Peter Farrelly directed, and it was so friggin' hot. It was Atlanta, and I was wearing black polyester from head to toe. And I remember just leaning against Jane Lynch the whole time, thinking I was going to faint any minute. And Larry David was one of the nuns. And it was really hard to look at him and not lose it, I got to say. He was brutissima as a nun.
Now, you've recently appeared at the wonderful series in Boston called Earful, where they have writers and musicians. Do you find it difficult sharing stages with musicians, or is it?
No, I love it. I think it's great. I think it's a wonderful venue, just a really great venue. And the last one that I did a mini version of it because they're expanding to the Omni. They're starting to do smaller rooms at the Omni. So I did that. But before that, Chris and I, Chris read something from Tom Perrotta's Tracy Flick Can't Win, which is a lot of monologues, very funny. But he also played the male voices. I did one of my Christina stories, and he was pretty hilarious. He played like he was grandpa, and he was like, "Hey, sorry." Every time he'd say that, I almost lost it. It was
Going back to Five Dog Epiphany, where if people wanted to get a rescue dog themselves, what do they do to start?
Well, I went through Pet Finder, and then that led me to Senla, which is Central Louisiana. It's like right up the middle, Alexandria. And this woman who rescues dogs, she's like Xena Warrior Princess. She's like this big, tall, incredible looking woman who by day is an emergency room doctor, and then in her spare time is saving dogs. So I'm kind of in awe of her. And she was the one who delivered TT and Sugar, the 2 rescues that we have now. I know they have pole dancer names. I did not name them. But
is there a great need for dogs to be rescued now? I'm trying
absolutely. You know what she told me? She said that in Alexandria, like they'll get a hunting dog, and it's like if that dog don't hunt, she said there are packs of them running alongside the highway. They just throw it out, and they don't have laws like we do about animal cruelty, so you can have some redneck keep TT in a cage for 6 years until so neglected that the harness grows into her flesh. That drives me so insane that, I said to her, why are you not in jail for murder? Because, oh my God, that kind of cruelty is just, it's really hard to fathom, isn't it? Yeah.
I really, really like how you intertwine grief and overcoming grief with the rescued dogs. Re-experiencing any of it, was the book hard to write?
It really wasn't. It was, I wrote every day during the COVID thing, and I was keeping this plague diary, and I kind of ended up plagiarizing myself from the plague diary, because a lot of what I wrote in the diary ended up going into Five Dog Epiphany. So, and I had written a lot about these animals before, and so I had a whole collection there, of animal stuff. So it's really not hard. People ask me that about my first book, Jessie, and I gotta say, first everybody kept saying, is it cathartic? So many people asked me that I looked up the meaning of the word cathartic. The root meaning is to purge. And I thought, I have not purged my son like a Soviet style purge. In fact, I wrote that so I could spend time with him, so I could be with him every day. I did not write that. I have to say, I didn't write it out of humanitarian goals to make everybody understand, blah, blah. I wrote it for myself. I wrote it to spend time with him every single day, you know.
And our culture encouraging the purging of grief, or removing of grief and getting over grief. And I think we're just starting to turn a corner now to recognize that, you know, you live with it and you remember, and that's okay.
After the plague, yeah, so many people died. But I wrote about that in the first book. I said, you know, my mother's culture, they recognize grief. They're, you know, they have mourning rituals. They have songs. Skora mai means you have left me dark. You know, it's like, but we don't have that here. It's like we don't even recognize death here. And if you're still grieving, I wrote this rage essay. It's on my website, my very neglected website, I might say, about complicated grief. The DSM had this thing like, if you're still grieving 6 months after losing someone, you know, you really need to be on meds. And, you know, it just enraged me to hear that. I thought, I will grieve my son the rest of my life. What is wrong with you? That I don't understand that. I mean, it's like, I guess it's just, you know, well, happiest place on earth, right? Disney, blah, blah, right? It's in our culture. It's youthful. We don't understand aging. We don't understand death.
Exactly. And like, oh, please don't bother me with your sadness, because it's ruining my day.
Exactly. You're harshing my mellow. So yeah.
That's good. So your book, Five Dog Epiphanies, is going to help people out with this, and they'll be able to see the light.
I hope it gets people to rescue animals too, which is pretty cool. You know, I mean, rescue dogs are amazing. You know, I mean, the first dog we got, I wrote about, you know, Goody. I didn't understand about puppy mills. I didn't know anything about this. Jesse asked Santa for a dog, so we did the wrong thing. We went to a pet store, but this was way like 94, right? I did not know about puppy mills or any of that stuff. And I did feel guilt about that afterwards. And I would, you know, from now on, I mean, that's it, rescues only, because there's nothing like it. There's nothing like seeing a dog come back from that kind of, you know, distance and PTSD to really enjoy being a dog. It's beautiful. It's beautiful to see.
All right. Well, it's really beautiful and wonderful to have you here with us again. And I'm going to show people just what the covers look like of your previous books.
Oh, thanks. Oh, yeah, I should have had those.
Here they are. Mom Speaks Up, which is critically acclaimed. Just a wonderful book. And Jessie, A Mother's Story, which we talked about a little bit, very briefly here. But check out their books. If you can't wait, you just can't wait for Five Dog Epiphany. It's always good to support the writer. And hopefully we'll see the new book very, very soon.
I hope so. Thank you, Tim.
Thank you, Marianne. Folks that are watching the live stream on Facebook, I see a number for you. So feel free to come on in and join the open mic. Use the link. It's wonderful that you joined us. And if not, we'll see you the next time.